Hey friends, it's Carrie. Today I want to show you how I built this hot air balloon sculpture using paper mache and some objects I found at the thrift store. This type of sculpture is called assemblage, which is basically a fancy way of saying I found some objects and glued them together. I started with a 12-inch balloon covered with strips of paper mache. I like to alternate the layers between printed paper and plain paper just so I can tell what I've already covered. I end up using 5 or 6 layers for this one. Something I learned in using balloons with paper mache is you really want to work quickly. The balloon can lose its shape after a while, and that can cause the layers of paper to buckle and become misshapen. Between layers, I worked on the basket. I removed the handle and cleaned up the basket. And there was a little bald spot in the basket where the handle had been, so I ended up just painting the whole thing. Using a piece of twine, I tied on these metal rings in each corner. I cut some strips of muslin and then sewed them into little bags. I turned the bags right side out and then filled them with these poly pellets. The poly pellets give the bags a lumpy sort of texture, and I like that you can see that they have a little weight to them. I tied a piece of string around the top of each bag and then trimmed them to look a little nicer. And then I tied each bag into the outside corner of the basket just below the metal ring. With the paper mache dry, I removed the balloon from the inside and then decided what I wanted to use for the burner. These are a few votive holders I found at the thrift store. I pick up baskets and votive holders every time I can for the sole purpose of making these hot air balloons. For this project, I chose this one. I cut a hole in the bottom of the balloon that would fit the votive holder. You can see here the balloon still has some give to it. I don't mind this, but if you want a more solid balloon, you'll want to add more layers of paper mache. I also cut a hole in the top of the balloon the same size as this metal ring. I probably should have left the hole just a little bit smaller so it'd lay in there better, but this will work just fine. If I had more layers of paper, this would have been much easier to cut. It's okay though, this part will be covered up. I painted the balloon with acrylic paint and then I set it aside to dry. Then I chose some string from my string box and measured out an approximate length. I doubled this number and added a little bit, and then I cut 16 lengths and tied each piece to the metal ring with a lark's head knot. I put the ring on the top of the balloon and then evenly distributed the strings. A little bit of glue will hold this in place. I split the pairs, grabbed the right one and a left one from adjacent pairs, and then tied a knot. I continued this pattern all the way around. And then I split those pairs and grabbed a right string and a left string from adjacent pairs again, and then tied another knot. I did this all the way around a second time. And then I repeated that whole thing a third time. Next, I tied 4 pieces of string to an embroidery hoop. I used a 4-inch embroidery hoop for this one, but I think a 5-inch might have been a better choice. I stopped here for a minute and decided to attach the hanging device at this point, which made it much easier to assemble everything else later on. I cut a piece of PVC pipe to a length just a tiny bit shorter than the widest diameter of the balloon. I put the pipe inside the balloon and then checked it for the fit. You want the pipe to stay level and touch both sides of the balloon near the top. Once I was happy with the fit, I placed 2 eye-hook screws directly opposite each other at exactly the midpoint of the pipe. I attached an S-hook to 2 pieces of chain and closed the S with my pliers. One chain was the length I needed to hang from the ceiling, and the other length was a short piece that I'll use to connect the votive holder. I attached the other ends of the S-hooks to the eye-hooks and then closed those ends with my pliers as well. I used some 5-minute epoxy on the ends of the pipe and then put the pipe back up into the balloon. Then I fed the long chain up through the top hole and hung the balloon before the epoxy set. This way I could make sure that the balloon was level. When the epoxy was set, I attached the embroidery hoop. Having the balloon hanging helped me see where to position the ring. I took the balloon down to attach the basket simply because the basket was kind of heavy. I connected 1 piece of string to each metal loop in the basket corners and then tied the other end around the embroidery hoop. The votive I chose needed a way to hang from the balloon, so I just added a few pieces of string and then made a loop at the top. And then your balloon's finished. You can hang it up this way, or you can add more details. If you end up making your own hot air balloon sculpture, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to get your feedback. Thanks for watching, friends, and have a magical day.